The House voted today to pass the long-awaited John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, which seeks to restore voting rights protections that were severely weakened by the Supreme Court. It passed the House along party lines with 219 Democrats in favor and all 212 Republicans opposing. And like the For the People Act, it now faces an uphill battle in the Senate, where it likely will not receive the 60 votes needed to get past a filibuster. I got a chance to sit down with Black Voters Matter co-founder Cliff Albright earlier today and ask him about the vote and what the group did today to keep the focus on voting rights. Take a listen. So, Cliff, you were at a rally today in front of the White House, the League of Women Voters rally. You spoke at that rally. It's about trying to refocus the White House's attention on voting rights legislation. What did you say to the people in attendance at that rally?
Yeah, I was delivering a message, and thank you, Charles. I was delivering a message, and we were all delivering the message that the president has got to pick a side, that he's got to get more involved in this battle for our voting rights, that he's got to get involved in picking a side, voting rights versus the filibuster. You can't say that you support both. It's one or the others, and clearly we want him to support voting rights. We made the argument that we need him to not just lose focus. We know that there are other things going on. We know that there's everything going on with Afghanistan, and he's getting some criticisms for that, and that's getting a lot of his attention, and that's an important issue. But at the end of the day, we can't be off, I'm trying to save lives elsewhere and fighting for democracy elsewhere, which is important, but we can't do that in lieu of fighting for democracy and voting rights right here in the U.S., right? And so we need him to put just as much energy into our voting rights as he's putting into Afghanistan or what he's putting into infrastructure. In fact, the demand that I made, the request that I made was that he use his power to say, look, I'm glad y'all passed infrastructure, but you know what? Until y'all pass voting rights, I'm not going to sign that bill, right? He's got the power to do that. Now, whether or not that's a priority for him is another story. But if he meant what he said when he said that we're facing the biggest threat since the Civil War, then this should be a no-brainer for him. If he meant what he said when he said that he'd always have black voters back and that he's trying to save the soul of the nation, then it should be a no-brainer for him. He should be willing to elevate our voting rights in this legislation ahead of, or at least on par with, the same energy that he's been putting into infrastructure.
Right, but infrastructure is his signature piece of legislation. He seems to be prioritizing that over everything else. Do you truly believe that he would hold that hostage to hold out for voting rights?
I believe that we would have to force him to do so. I believe that he's not just going to wake up and decide that he wants to do that, right? Power concedes nothing without a demand. But guess what? Lyndon B. Johnson didn't want to prioritize the voting rights bill either. In 1965, our folks, our movement had to make him do that. We had to make him say yes when in fact he wanted to say no. And so it's the same situation with President Biden. I'm clear about what his natural priority is in this moment. I'm clear that he wants his signature to be this infrastructure bill. But we've got to force him, we've got to push him into saying, you know what, the infrastructure of this democracy, our voting rights, is just as important as the hard infrastructure of streets and roads and bridges. At the end of the day, it's our voting rights that even makes an infrastructure bill be possible. It's our voting rights that lets us go across the world to defend democracy. So if it's not just about voting rights in isolation, if he cares about the rest of his agenda, and I'll even put it more bluntly, just from a selfish motive, if he doesn't want to be impeached because this wave of voter suppression allows Republicans, the same Republicans that voted to overturn the election, to then come in and have control of Congress, guess what they're going to do on day one? They're going to file articles of impeachment against him, not because he's done anything wrong, not because of anything factual or legitimate, but guess what? They've already demonstrated that they don't need facts to be on their side. So even if he doesn't do it because the issue itself is important enough to him and enough of a priority for him, he needs to do it just out of pure self-preservation, because it's not just our voting rights that's at risk and our ability to control the politics of our communities. It's his entire agenda and his entire administration. His entire legacy is at stake. He's got to see that, and we believe once he sees that he will use the full power of his office to push the Senate into getting these bills passed.
Let's take this idea of holding legislation hostage down a layer to the Congress itself. Do you believe that progressives or the Black Caucus should adopt that tactic? Should they say to the rest of Congress, we are not voting for anything else until we get this passed?
Absolutely right, Charles. The short answer to your question is yes. We believe that progressive members, whether that be the Congressional Black Caucus, whether that be the Progressive Caucus, we believe that progressive members should use that influence. Look, right now you got 9 or 10 moderates that are getting a lot of attention because they're threatening the infrastructure bill because they don't want to vote on the budget bill. They want to just vote on infrastructure. So you got 9 or 10 moderates that are making a lot of noise, holding legislation hostage. But guess what? They're not the only ones that can play that game. We got 9 members of a progressive caucus or 9 members of the Congressional Black Caucus. Heck, we don't even need the whole Black Caucus to take this stance, even if just half of the Black Caucus did. And be clear, the Black Caucus has been with us on that. Let me remind folks, 4 members of the Congressional Black Caucus have been arrested with us over the past 6 weeks out in these streets at the Senate offices demanding that the filibuster be ended and that the voting rights legislation be passed. So they're not the problem. But right now, we might need to encourage them.
Cliff, have any of those members, have you talked to any of them specifically about this idea of saying, drawing a line in the sand and saying, we're not going to vote on this? Anything else? Or are those same members who think it's a big deal, but they're still going to go along with the party line because they need Biden agendas to move forward, and Nancy's going to lean on them, and Chuck is going to lean on them, and they're just going to go along?
Right. Well, I can't. We've had conversations with folks, right? And I can't necessarily say which members are leaning towards doing what. I think it'll become clear within the next couple of days of who takes what positions. But I think some of the members have already been vocal about at least not wanting to just go along and signing the infrastructure bill until some of their priorities, the House priorities, progressive priorities, are dealt with. So I think you'll be seeing more within the next couple of days that'll make that pretty clear. But at the end of the day, again, even for those House members, we have got to do the work out in public, out in the streets with our phone calls, so it becomes clear when they push that issue, when they use that leverage, that they're doing so because that there's been a mass appeal, that there's been a mass request or a demand for them to do so. So we've got to do our part, and then we've also got to make sure that they're accountable and that they do their part. But we are trying to amplify, we are trying to introduce and put on the table that just as these moderates can try to persuade the legislation, that the progressives can do the same thing, again, whether that's the Black Caucus, Progressive Caucus, or just folks, the common sense caucus, right, that needs to see that unless some leverage like that is used, that these folks in the Senate are not going to just act out of the goodwill of their hearts, or out of the better angels of their nature, so to speak. We've got to use, that's what power is all about. So I'm agreeing with you completely. We have got to use that leverage, and we need those members of Congress to use those leverage. But the rally today was about the president and his ability to use that leverage, because at the end of the day, he's the one that's got to sign whatever it's going to be. We need him to step up as well. If he made this call, it wouldn't matter what the House members said. If he made the call to the Senate, to the moderates in the Senate, and saying, look, pass the voting rights, and then we can have everything. We can have the infrastructure, the voting rights, the budget reconciliation. He's got the power to do so, but again, he's got to demonstrate that it's enough of a priority, and if he's not going to do that on his own, we've got to push him into doing so the same way we pushed LBJ into his moment of greatness.
Often when you criticize the White House in this way, or you just bring this to their attention that they're not using the full force of the institution to help advance voting rights legislation, you get a pushback from them that says, oh, we're doing all that we can do. They give you the whole list of every time he's mentioned something about voting rights. They say there's negotiations happening behind the scenes. Does any of that give you comfort?
No, it doesn't, Charles, because at the end of the day, nobody is confused about where President Biden stands on infrastructure, right? He speaks about it. He traveled around to different states and to different cities. It's been said that they've had 300 meetings to deal with infrastructure that he's been involved in to some degree. We haven't seen that in regards to the voting rights. So they can't say that they're doing everything that they can do. We know what it looks like when the president does everything that he can do. We know what it looks like when the president leans in. How many times just over the past 3-4 days has he given a speech defending his position on Afghanistan and their response to the Afghanistan and the evacuations? We're crystal clear about where he stands on that, even to the point that he may have disagreed with some other folks in his administration. We know what it looks like when the president fully leans into an issue. We've not seen that from President Biden in regards to voting rights. So when they say they're doing all that they can do, no, we don't believe that. And then they make it worse when they float these notions around, oh, well, we don't think it's going to be that bad because we think that the voters are just going to come out and that groups are going to be able to out-organize the voter suppression. So when they send those messages, combined with the fact that he's not fully leaning in, it becomes clear that it's not enough of a priority, that he's not doing everything he can, and that part of the reason he's not is because he's putting the burden on those of us who put him in office to also be the ones that deal with the voter suppression. So no, he's not using everything. We know what it looks like when the president fully uses the bully pulpit. We know what it looks like when FDR fully used the bully pulpit, or when LBJ fully used the bully pulpit, or even when Obama fully used it to get health care passed, right? We know what that looks like. That's not what we're seeing, at least not on the issue of voting rights.
So, what is your prediction about what's going to happen? You said, that you believe that Biden could be impeached, that Republicans would draw articles of impeachment. That seems to suggest that you believe that if they don't pass voter protections, that Democrats will lose the House and or the Senate. Is that what you think is going to happen if they don't get this passed?
That's exactly what I'm saying, Charles. I mean, we're gonna do everything we can, regardless of what the situation is. But this notion that we can out-organize voter suppression simply is not the case. Think of it like this: even if we did everything that we could do, and even if we got more votes than we got last time, what are they doing? Look at Georgia right now, which a few months ago passed their voter suppression bill, which includes the provision that allows the state legislature to basically take over local boards of elections. They have already started the process of investigating and trying to replace the Fulton County Board of Elections. And as you know, Fulton County is the most populous county. It's where most of the black voters live, brown voters, and other progressive-leaning voters. They don't have to take over every county. If they just take over that one, that changes the course of any future election. If this law was in place during the recent elections, whether the presidential in November or the Senate runoff in January, if that provision was in place, it would have allowed the state Republicans to do exactly what the other guy that was in the White House asked them to do, right? Go out and find 700 votes. They would have been able to do that, or they would have been able to just say, you know what, let's just get rid of Fulton County altogether. That's what they tried to do in Michigan, when they tried to get rid of Detroit's votes, right? And so this bill would allow them to do exactly what they've tried to do. We can't out-organize that, and we can't out-litigate that if we don't have the tools in the form of these bills with which to do that. We've got to have the legislation passed. Otherwise, they will lose the House. They will lose the Senate. And yes, I believe that Joe Biden would get impeached on day one with a new Republican control. Think of McCarthy as the Speaker of the House, and maybe even an impeachment where, you've probably heard this, where Trump could be the person presiding over the impeachment, right? And so that's not far-fetched. That's not hyperbole. It is very possible, if they don't deal with the voter suppression, if they don't pass these bills, and if they lose control of Congress, all of that becomes not just a nightmare scenario. It could very well become a reality.
Cliff Albright, thank you so much for your time, sir. Really appreciate it. Thanks again to Cliff Albright, and more Prime after the break.